Hello, Patriots, praying citizens, and truth seekers. It's February 19th. This is another humongous Q drop. There's so much digging that I had to do, so I want to give you a warning so you can get very comfortable. And I also want to suggest that older viewers who take blood pressure medicine, make sure you took yours today, because this one's really going to make your blood boil. So the name of the video is New Q, Treason, Sedition, Subversion, the Iran, Iraq, Bush, Obama payoffs. But before we get into that portion, let's start with the first Q post from late last night, 28:01. Q says, pick a network, any network, and then just search QAnon. So we have a very long list of different websites. You can see they range from NBC, ABC, Washington Post, The Guardian, Fox News, Breitbart, New Yorker, LA Times, Esquire, Jerusalem Post, etc., etc. Another bunch, The Hill, Salon, Miami New Times, Rolling Stone, BuzzFeed, Media Matters, etc. And then he says reconcile. So I just chose a few to show you. This is from the Federalist. Some of you may follow Molly Hemingway, who's an excellent writer, and I was surprised to find this at the Federalist. Why thousands are obsessed with a nest of conspiracy theories called QAnon. That was from August 21st of 2018 by Georgie Borman. QAnon is a conspiracy theory so comprehensive there is virtually no other conspiracy theory it leaves untouched, from the government hiding the UFOs to JFK Jr. surviving his plane crash. Then the next one, from trolling to fleecing, co-creator of Q hoax explains its scary evolution. And that's another story by Georgie Borman. How the QAnon internet hoax sowed lies, spread chaos, and conspiracy theories, and profited off its surprisingly large following. This was from Snopes, which is that fake site that supposedly fact checks things, but it's a Soros plant and it's some guy. Well, I did a long search on Snopes a long time ago. Let me just say this, it's not worth your time, but I thought it would be interesting to see what the worst of the worst is saying. So here he says billboards promoting 4chan conspiracy theory QAnon pop up across America. So this is just a bunch of different articles that were written. So this was from June 29th of 2018 about the billboards in Georgia and Oklahoma. Reference a farcical and ill-defined deep state conspiracy theory. But who's paying for them? The next one was Senator Chuck Schumer, a client of Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss. And this is the article written on the 24th of January 2019. 8chan and QAnon trolls worked diligently to push this smear campaign into the mainstream. On and on and on. I'm not going to read the rest of these. Anyway, some of them are using words that if I say, it gets my YouTube video censored, and I don't want to do that. I work too hard on these things, and they're too important to get out there for YouTube to just decide that because I might mention a word or two that it's not appropriate for all audiences. This was from the Jerusalem Post. Is the QAnon conspiracy theory anti-Semitic? Saturday, August 4th, 2018. Then from the Miami New Times, QAnon believers think the president wants to hire Broward's QAnon cop. You remember this guy wearing a Q patch, he got fired. And Q offered him a job. So that's a few of them. And then someone put this awesome graphic together. I found this on Twitter. Different headlines from different places, from the Rolling Stone to the Hill to the Daily Beast to Newsweek. So anyway, that's just a nice little piece of information about different places where they were speaking out against the QAnon movement. Then I wanted to also show you something from November 27th of 2018 when Donald Trump said that he thought the U.S. should launch its own state-run cable TV network that would compete with CNN for viewers across the globe. So anyway, this is in reference to a Q post yesterday talking about this type of thing, and he said he compared it to RT, which I thought meant Russia Today, but actually it probably means in real time. So Trump being able to put up his own network, and who's ever in the White House can have it, and it would just give us the real information that the White House wants out there in real time. Back to the Q post. This is 2802. It is a repost of 2681, which was only a few days ago on February 9th, and it gave us a timeline. So notice at the top, minus 30, minus 45, minus 60, minus 90. And then it's a long post, but just to kind of summarize it, we had on the 18th, which was yesterday, it was announced that Rod Rosenstein is going to be leaving the FBI DOJ mid-March. We had William Barr being confirmed by the Senate last week. He takes over as Attorney General, which he has started doing. He now has oversight of the Mueller investigation. And then down here, you notice that Q says blockade removal according to the Scaramucci model, which means you have a temporary person in office, aka Matthew Whitaker, who was in charge of the Justice Department in place of Justice Sessions, who resigned, and then he did a lot of work behind the scenes. Because he's not Senate confirmed and because he's only there temporarily, he was able to do a lot of house cleaning, and I think we will begin to see what happened with that. And then he's staying on under William Barr. So we've got Rosenstein leaving as predicted by Q. We have Orr being removed. We haven't seen that yet. And then he says 1 through 4 removal. We have Barr and Whitaker reviewing Rod Rosenstein's notes and the strong, quote-unquote, strong reservations to declass because they don't want to expose sources and methods. And out that goes out the window. So Barr is going to be ordering, according to Q, the declassification of FISA applications and the reports. I'm not exactly sure which of those, but some of it is going to be declassified. Then Barr will give the House Committee documents, the scope memo, to meet with the Office of the Inspector General, so that would be Michael Horowitz and John Huber, who's a special prosecutor. Then you have the Democrats using the power of the subpoena to stall the public release of any information. Trump meeting with North Korea's Kim on February 27th and 28th, and they're going to be talking about the continued denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Donald Trump will lift sanctions and provide aid, humanitarian aid, to the starving people in North Korea. And then according to Q, the UK and Australia will try to shift the narrative away from their illegal spying on Trump through the Five Eyes network. And that's that network of five, of Mother England and her children. And it's the intelligence agencies working together, and they're not supposed to be spying on each other, but that's what they're doing. So Q says the timeline was 30 days beginning, the timeline began on February 9th, so we had some things happening in the first 30 days, and then 45 days, 60 days, and 90 days until it's all finished. Now, according to this post, Q says the Democrats will claim that the sky is falling and they're going to try to push the public and scare to control them and project the evil that is being done by that party on the other people who are trying to do the right thing. And this is not a party thing. This is not Democrats versus Republicans, but the majority of the people who are deep state are in the Democrat Party, and there are conservatives in the Republican Party who do not fit under the deep state. So that's why Q says D so often, is because that's the majority of where those people are hiding out. Public awakening, narrative damage control, placeholders active, wall discussion end, public awareness of the D's, red/green castle per original plan, which is the Army Corps of Engineers building the wall, dark to light. And then this is a link to that YouTube video of Donald Trump on the campaign trail outlining what he is doing right now. Q says, timeline attached, what has since occurred? Future proves past, track and update, think calendar. Q. Then he posted, look for placeholder updates at Patriots Fight. I put the address for this bulletin board. You can see it's https://hch.net/patriotsfight/index.html. That is where you will find what you see in the background here, this gavel and these Q posts. So he says he's going to be we should be updating this placeholder, arrests, indictments, all that stuff will be here. And then he says indictments, arrests, and D-class will force worldwide coverage. Leaks, bribery, collusion regarding media will force resignations with follow-up criminal prosecution. Q. And then under that, first placeholders, OIG report, D-class, other released facts regarding 18 U.S. Code Chapter 115, treason, sedition, and subversive activities. Q. Now, I will again warn you, there are things on this board, even on this one, that should stay clean. There was an ad for, it was disgusting. So anyway, just as a warning, just kind of, scroll past the top banner and you'll get to this stuff on this bulletin board, and hopefully the board owner will select different advertising to go at the top. All right, 2805 is a link to James Comey's Twitter account. And this particular post, listen to this. Now, he is quoting from a David Brooks article, an opinion piece in, I think it's the New York Times. It's called A Nation of Weavers. The social renaissance is happening from the ground up. This is so much malarkey, as my husband would say. It's just garbage. But anyway, just listen, and he's quoting from this guy's piece. Quote, every time you assault and stereotype a person, you've ripped the social fabric. Every time you see that person deeply and make him or her feel known, you've woven it. David Brooks, 218 New York Times, is right that we all need to be weavers if we are to heal our beloved country. So, Q responds, and this is directed at Comey. Drop put you on notice? Direction to bunker down, stop talking, or risk being assaulted? A woven, elaborate nest will not save or protect you, nor will the CIA further provide you with actionable intelligence. Cold on the outside? Traitor's justice, Q. And I remember the movie The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, so coming in from the cold meaning you're on the outs. And so he's on the outs, they're not letting him have any more intelligence, and he's all by himself. 2806 is a meme. Now that Russia collusion is a proven lie, when do the trials for treason begin? Yes, we've all been asking that question. So you've got these people behind bars, Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton, James Comey, James Clapper, Uma Abedin, Hillary, Eric Holder, Barack Obama, Brennan, Mueller, Podesta, and Rod Rosenstein. Okay, I just want to remind you, as I go to this next story, this stuff happened in 2003. It's a long time ago, and I was not paying attention back in 2003. I was busy raising children and giving riding lessons and taking care of horses. So I wasn't really paying attention. And probably some of you did pay attention, and kudos. But we're going to get everybody up to speed. This is the thing that's going to make your blood boil. So I just want to remind you that God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that is what he will reap. And that's Galatians 6:7. So just keep that in mind. God's not blind. He's listening, he sees, and he knows. 2807. Topic: taxpayer theft. Now remember, so whatever the stories say, different stories that Q gives us, it's taxpayer theft. Insider versus outsider, retain control versus lose control. Kennedy was an outsider and he was assassinated. Reagan was an outsider and there was an assassination attempted on him. He survived. POTUS is an outsider, class high. How much money in cash was sent by the Fed to Iraq? So, how the U.S. sent $12 billion in cash to Iraq and watched it vanish. Now remember, this is not Iran, which is what Obama did. This is Iraq. This was done under George W. Bush. Special flights brought in tons of banknotes which disappeared into the war zone. This first one is from The Guardian. It's from 2007, outlining a congressional investigation into all this money going to Iraq. So there were bundles of cash sent in 2003 for, quote, reconstruction. The total weight of this money was 363 tons. It was sent from New York to Baghdad. And the story says that the money came from Iraqi oil sales, surplus funds from the UN Oil for Food program, and seized Iraqi assets. However, remember what Q says? Topic: taxpayer theft. The U.S. flew nearly $12 billion in shrink-wrapped $100 bills into Iraq, then distributed the cash with no proper control over who was receiving it and how it was being spent. It was the biggest transfer of cash in the history of the Federal Reserve at the time. Deliveries took place once or twice a month, with the biggest of $2.4 billion on June 12, 2004, 6 days before the handover. Okay, now this is talking, the CPA is a group called the Coalition something. I have it later, let's see, it's called the Coalition Provisional Authority. All right. So one official described an environment awash in $100 bills. A contractor received a $2 million payment in a duffel bag stuffed with shrink-wrapped bundles of currency. Auditors discovered that the key to a vault was kept in an unsecured backpack, and $774,000 had been stolen from one division's vault. Cash payments were made from the back of a pickup truck, and cash was stored in unguarded sacks in Iraqi ministry offices. One official was given $6.75 million in cash and was ordered to spend it in 1 week before the interim Iraqi government took control of Iraqi funds. The minutes from a May 2004 Coalition Provisional Authority meeting reveal a single disbursement of $500 million in security funding, labeled merely "to be determined." The memorandum concludes, many of the funds appear to have been lost to corruption and waste. Thousands of ghost employees were receiving paychecks from Iraqi ministries under the CPA's control. Some of the funds could have enriched both criminals and insurgents fighting in the U.S. The memorandum concludes, many of the funds appeared to have been lost to corruption and waste. Thousands of ghost employees were receiving paychecks from Iraqi ministries under the CPA's control. Some of the funds could have enriched both criminal and insurgents fighting in the U.S. Okay, now I went and looked up some of the people behind what was going on. And you talk about something that will take you days to put it all together. There were so many contractors and this and that going on. So much money being taken. So they were supposed to have oversight by an actual certified public accountant group to just keep track of where this money went. They hired instead somebody called North Star Consultants, who operated out of a private home in San Diego to oversee the disbursements. Now, I went on the internet and I found North Star Consulting Group. I don't know if this is them. I highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure these people took the money and ran. Now, Paul Bremer was the head of the Coalition Provisional Authority, and when he spoke to the Congressional Committee, he reminded them that the subject of today's hearing is the CPA's use and accounting for funds belonging to the Iraqi people held in the so-called Development Fund for Iraq. And then he said, these are not appropriated American funds, they're Iraqi funds. I believe the CPA discharged its responsibilities to manage these Iraqi funds on behalf of the Iraqi people. And then he had a spokesman who was later questioned. You will not believe what this guy said. He said this, I'm saying, what difference does it make where this money went? Does that remind you of a certain Hillary Clinton and the people who died in the Benghazi attack? And she said, I don't know, what difference does it make? Okay, now here's the next article that Q sent us to. It's from Reuters. U.S. sent pallets of cash to Baghdad. The Federal Reserve sent record payouts of more than $4 billion in cash to Baghdad on giant pallets aboard military planes shortly before the U.S. gave control back to the Iraqis, and this is according to lawmakers. All right, here's another thing I went and looked up. There were two guys. Their last names were Custer and Battles. Does that kind of sound made up? I don't know. And they were hired to protect this shipment of money. They were awarded a $16.5 million contract, and they were a startup company, which goes against the rules. When contracts are awarded, they're not to go to startups. They eventually got more than $100 million in Iraqi contracts, and they were later sued for defrauding the government dozens of times. This was a website, it's called Corp Watch, Holding Corporations Accountable. It's an old article. This was not something that Q sent us to, but just as I was looking around, I found this and just wanted to read to you this bottom paragraph. Once the money arrived in Iraq, it entered a free-for-all environment where virtually anyone with fingers could take some of it. Moreover, the company that was hired to keep tabs on the outflow of money existed mainly on paper. Based in a private home in San Diego, that's the North Star Company, it was a shell corporation with no certified public accountants. Its address of record is a post office box in the Bahamas, where it is legally incorporated. That post office box has been associated with shadowy offshore activities. So the home in San Diego, operating under the North Star Consultants, was owned by Thomas and Consuelo Howell. They operated several businesses out of their home, including a home construction company and a furniture sales company. The name that they operated under is called International Financial Consulting. So that was another business at their home address. Under the terms of CPA Regulation Number 2, signed by Paul Bremer on June 15, 2003, money coming into Iraq was supposed to be tracked by an independent certified public accounting firm. Howell was not a CPA, nor were any of the people who worked for him. Bremer seems to have been unaware of this detail. When he was asked at a congressional hearing earlier this year about North Star, he answered, "I don't know what kind of firm it was, other than it was an accounting firm." And then he was asked, "Would it upset you if you found out there were no accountants on North Star's staff?" And then Bremer answered, "It would if it were true." Okay, then another article from Q, New York Fed's $40 billion Iraqi money trail. And Q asks, how much money, cash, was confiscated from the Iraq Central Bank? And then he sends us to some more articles. Example, not intended for public awareness. And then another article. So let's go ahead and start looking at those. So the first one is called OZ.com. December 2015, at around 4 a.m. on March 18th, the day before American cruise missiles began to rain down on the Iraqi capital, 3 large trucks pulled up to the central bank, and for several hours a steady stream of metal boxes filled with some $900 million in U.S. $100 bills and $100 million in euros were loaded onto the waiting vehicles. The heist didn't require guns or explosives, just a handwritten note handed to the bank's governor insisting that the extraordinary measure was necessary to prevent the money from falling into foreign hands. The man delivering the signed note was Qusay Hussein, the head of Iraqi security forces, and the signatory of the note, his father, and the soon-to-be deposed Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. But despite Saddam's best efforts, the truckloads of cash did eventually fall into foreign hands, perhaps even your own. And then at the very bottom, so when Saddam, who had wrongly assumed that the Americans would never invade Iraq, made the last-minute demand for $1 billion, no one at the central bank requested a legitimate financial rationale for the withdrawal. And this is a quote: "When you get an order from Saddam Hussein, you do not discuss it," an unidentified Iraqi official with knowledge of the heist told the New York Times. Then this article: investigation into missing Iraqi cash ended in Lebanon bunker. All right, some of this, well, I'll go ahead and read it all. I'm sorry for reading so much. People are criticizing me for reading, but how else am I supposed to give you guys the information? It's not going to happen by telepathy. So let me read. Over the next year and a half, $12 billion to $14 billion was sent to Iraq in the airlift. An additional $5 billion was sent by electronic transfer. Exactly what happened to that money after it arrived in Baghdad became one of the many unanswered questions from the chaotic days of the American occupation, when billions were flowing into the country from the U.S. and corruption was rampant. Finding the answer became the first job and then the obsession of Stuart Bowen Jr., or Bowen, a friend from Texas of George W. Bush, who in 2004 was appointed to serve as a special inspector general to investigate corruption and waste in Iraq. Before his office was finally shut down last year, Mr. Bowen believed he might have succeeded, but only partly in that mission. Much of the money was probably used by the Iraqi government in some way, he concluded. But for years, Mr. Bowen could not account for billions more until his investigators finally had a breakthrough, discovering that $1.2 billion to $1.6 billion had been stolen and moved to a bunker in rural Lebanon for safekeeping. "I don't know how the money got to Lebanon," Mr. Bowen said. "If I knew that, we would have made more progress on that case." Then this was the Fox News article, and Q says, if it worked in Iraq, why not replicate it in Iran? How much money, cash, was sent to Iran? So this brings us up to the Obama administration. Here is the Fox News article from August 24th of 2016. U.S. paid Iran $1.3 billion 2 days after $400 million cash transfer. So this was the Obama administration admitting that it paid $1.3 billion in interest, baloney, to Iran in January to resolve a decades-old dispute over undelivered military sale, 2 days after allowing $400 million in cash to fly to Tehran. Now, who controls all this money? It's right here, State Department. So this spokeswoman, Elizabeth Trudeau, said the U.S. couldn't say more about the January 19th payments because of diplomatic sensitivity. Baloney. They involved 13 separate payments of I can't even repeat this number. It's $99 million, all nines, and a final payment of about $10 million. There was no explanation for the Treasury Department keeping the individual transactions under $100 million. The money settles the dispute over a $400 million payment made in the 70s. Again, I read this stuff and I have to read what it says, but I just am, in the inside I'm screaming. You guys know that, I'm sure, and you're screaming as well. So the Obama administration told us that this was when the Shah left and he came to the U.S. and we had to pay him the interest on the money, blah, 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 and there was equipment that was purchased and he never got his equipment. But really? Are you kidding me? It was that much money? Okay, so anyway, down to the bottom. The $1.3 billion dollars covers what Iran and the U.S. agreed would be the interest on the $400 million over the decades. Q asks, who controls the distribution of funds? The State Department. Who accounts for the funds? Who has access to the funds? Who really has access to the funds? Do funds return in the form of political donations? Do funds return in the form of massive donations to foundations and or institutes, aka anybody who has one, including John McCain and the Clintons? Do funds return in the form of offshore bank accounts for future payments and payoffs? Replicate, environment, green, aid assist, etc. So that's talking about all these green movements. Does that remind you of the Green New Deal? And aid assistance to other countries, etc. No honest control in place, no checks and balances in place, no safeguards in place. Threat of an outsider becoming president, loss of control, and he sends us to that YouTube. Trillions of dollars at stake, controlled by group of special interests. Illusion of democracy. Welcome to the real world. And it's not fun when you wake up, is it, guys? We cannot afford to lose this rare opportunity to right the wrongs. We, the people, must reclaim what is rightfully ours. We must rise. We must fight. God bless the United States of America. Okay, so I think it's better that we know than we never know, right? Even though there's nothing we can do about it at this point other than make sure it never happens again. Please, God. 2808 is a great little video that explains the Q movement. Q says, thank you, Patriot. And the title is QAnon is 100% coming from the Trump administration. And he even goes into the Las Vegas thing. So it's a great little video, and I recommend you watch it. Okay, 2809 is this NBC News tweet. New, exclusive. Trump administration launches global campaign to end the criminalization of homosexuality in dozens of nations where it's still illegal to be gay. U.S. officials tell NBC News a bid aimed in part at denouncing Iran over its human rights record. And then it has a picture of Richard Grenell, who is a Trump ambassador, and he is openly gay. And then Q says, but fake news pushes the narrative that POTUS is blah, 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 racist, homophobic, you name it. Hashtag Wake Up America, Q. 2810, start from the beginning. Small sampling of proofs. Patriots in control. You are the news now. And then some shill responds, in control of what? Nothing, that's what. And Q says, he responds with a video, are you ready, shill? Survival of the fittest. And this is another great little film. It's a military power film. People who love to watch patriotic films will love this little, it's like 2 minutes long or 3 minutes. Then the next one was We Are Q, and this is a picture of the inauguration. And we are Q. We are the people that support the president and the rule of law, and there is nothing stopping us now. 2813, another great clip. This is Joe DiGenova. He was on a radio program, and someone put it up on YouTube. So here's the link. And so I suggest if you want to watch any of these things, you go to the Q board. I put the qanon.pub in my show notes and below, and you'll see them. You can go there and you can watch some of these clips. Okay, so here are the highlights of this interview. And Joe DiGenova is a legal analyst, and he is a former prosecutor. He said, since July 5th of 2016, after Comey cleared Hillary of any wrongdoing with her illegal server, it has been obvious that the Obama FBI and DOJ were corrupt. The 60 Minutes interview and McCabe's book are a signed confession of violating the law, committing subversion, and sedition. They created a fake investigation based on no facts whatsoever. All you got was a conclusion from McCabe they had a basis for investigation. And Scott Pelley, who was the 60 Minutes interviewer, revealed a coup, and he said, he did what he didn't want to do, was revealed what was really going on, and the same as Robin Williams in her interview with Jussie Smollett. Whatever you want to say about Scott Pelley, they accidentally performed a service to the American public. They all need to be behind bars. Their worst nightmare, William Barr, walked into the office this morning, and he said that yesterday. And then one final quote, McCabe never denies the conversation about the 25th Amendment and wearing a wire. And I just want to add a comment here. So all of us who are in the Q movement, we think that we've just struck gold when we see McCabe saying that they planned on taking out the president using the 25th Amendment, but normies don't think that's a big deal. I had a conversation this morning with someone who is very smart and basically was like, yeah, our government's corrupt, politicians do things. And I said, yes, but this is like sedition and treason. And she said she wasn't fazed by it. So I think the public still has to wake up a little bit more before all of this can really have the impact that we are hoping for. All right, just a reminder, McCabe is already under criminal investigation for lies under oath. All the available evidence has been there was no collusion with Russia. The fact that Paul Manafort may go to jail for the rest of his life, that's unrelated to Trump. And McCabe is doing everything he can to make a public argument against his indictment. And that's what this 60 Minutes interview was about, and that's what his book is about. And then at the end of this interview, Joe DiGenova says, basically, the president is acting alone. So imagine when you go back here and you see all these people in front, minus the ones that are political Republicans and Democrats that are, I don't know how they got the front seats, but whoever these people are, and minus a lot of these people back here, the people that are for Trump are the little people out here, and those of us are those who never made it to the inauguration but would have liked to be there. And those are the people that are with the president. But as far as in his office and who's helping him, he's basically acting alone, according to Joe DiGenova. And then I thought I would just look at the Espionage Act of 1917, so 102 years ago. It was passed under Woodrow Wilson, and it was intended to prohibit interference with military operations or recruitment, to prevent insubordination in the military, and to prevent the support of the U.S. or of U.S. enemies during wartime. Okay, so we are in a war on terror right now. So whatever is applicable in wartime, it's happening now, and it will be interesting to see how many of these people will be indicted for espionage. Now that takes us to the end of the Q posts, and before we go, I want to invite those who want to pray to just stick around. I want to tie back into reaping and sowing. Jesus, when he told the parables of the wheat and the tares and the parable of the sower, he talked about the good seed and the bad seed, the wheat and the tares, and the fact that the good seed sometimes it falls on bad ground. But I know that those who are listening are the good seed planted in good ground, and I want to give you this encouragement. The seeds that are sown on good ground, such as hear the word and receive it and bring forth fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. And he said to them, is a candle brought to be put under a bushel or under a bed, and not to be set on a candlestick? For there is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret, but that it should come abroad. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. And he said to them, Take heed what you hear. With what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you. And unto you that hear shall more be given. For he that has, to him shall be given, and he that has not, from him shall be taken even that which he has. And he said, So is the kingdom of God, as if a man should cast a seed into the ground, and should sleep, and rise night and day, and the seed should spring and grow up. He knows not. For the earth brings forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. But when the fruit is brought forth, immediately he puts in the sickle, because a harvest is come. And he said, Whereunto shall we liken the kingdom of God, or with what comparison shall we compare it? It's like a grain of mustard seed, which, when it is sown in the earth, is less than all the seeds that be in the earth. But when it's sown, it grows up and becomes greater than all the herbs, and shoots out great branches, so that the fowls of the air may lodge under the shadow of it. And with many such parables spake he the word unto them, as they were able to hear it. You are hearing the word of God, and you are producing 30, 60, and 100-fold, even though you might not see it. I just want to thank you for your prayers. I want to thank you for the hope and the faith that you have in God, and that's what you bring to the Q movement. Thank you for telling people who have ears to hear the truth of Jesus, the truth of what's happening, the truth of what Donald Trump is trying to do. And I ask God to honor you for your efforts. Father, thank you for this mighty army that you have raised up. Be with them, Father. Give them opportunities to speak the truth to ears that will hear and eyes that will see. Father, strengthen them as they sleep. Strengthen them while they are awake. Give them great success and victory. Father, heal those that are sick. Strengthen the weary of heart. Give sleep to those for whom sleep is difficult. And bless all that they do for their good, Father, and for your glory. And I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all so much, and I will see you next time.